Hey everyone, so I made my Discord community vote for the best bosses in Soulsborne, and I have to say I'm surprised in the results. Big time. We'll go over the top 20 highest rated bosses, but before we begin I'll name some that just missed out on a spot. Father Gascoigne, Dancer of the Boreal Valley, Abyss Watchers, Genichiro, and the legendary Ornstein and Smough. Yeah, I'm already surprised. But let's begin. Number 20, Manus, Father of the Abyss. Manus is a great boss that feels completely different from the rest of the Dark Souls 1 bosses. It feels like it could have been made in Dark Souls 3, which is a huge compliment because that game has some pretty amazing bosses. Manus has the most combos out of any boss in the game. It's challenging and fair. And you guys like it too. Here, I'll show you. The best boss of Dark Souls 1, and easily the best mechanically, has an awesome moveset and a great atmosphere, always a great and challenging fight, and easily the best in Dark Souls 1. Manus is fucking great, but it's harsh to learn. Manus can destroy my anus any day. Moving on. Number 19, Pontiff Sulyvahn. Sully is a great skill check and a difficulty spike in Dark Souls 3. The arena is beautiful, the music is fucking epic, the moveset looks damn cool. It's an interesting way to make a gank fight as well in phase 2. And the boss greatly rewards parrying, to the point that if you learn his timings you can make him your bitch. And everyone else seems to like this boss as well, except for some salty guy who gave it an F. What the fuck? I love Pontiff, mostly for the whole atmosphere and intro. The slow chorus building up and him just standing in the cathedral, then his blades light up and the fun begins. Pontiff Sulyvahn is a soy boy, but he's a pretty good boss. True. Number 18, Fume Knight. Dark Souls 2 is getting some love today, thanks to Fume Knight. While I think he's slightly limited due to being in Dark Souls 2 with its slow ass combat, it's another boss that feels like it was made during Dark Souls 3's development. It's like they made this boss while also developing Pontiff Sulyvahn. One of the few good bosses in Dark Souls 2, despite the slow gameplay of Dark Souls 1, his moveset creates a nice sensation of speed, despite his moveset actually being rather limited in how much it tracks the player to make sure they can feasibly avoid all the attacks. The sense of momentum he has to his swings in phase 2 is rather good too. I wish Dark Souls 2 had more attack animations like these. Number 17, Champion Gundyr. I'm glad to see the champ make it on this list, as he's easily one of my favorites from Dark Souls 3 main game. I'm a bit sad Dancer of the Boreal Valley didn't make it though. Oh well. Champion Gundyr is great. I love how aggressive and athletic looking he is when he's kicking your ass. To be honest, Champion Gundyr is my favorite boss out of Dark Souls 3. He might be easier than some of the others, but the aggression and badassery of him is unrivaled. And the lore is pretty sad and intriguing too. Champion Gundyr, in my opinion, is probably the only reskin boss done right. There is lore to it as well. Number 16, Nameless King. Imagine if this was Sekiro, just lightning reversal this bitch out of existence. But since you can't do that, Nameless is often considered the hardest main game boss of Dark Souls 3, and one of the best. And I doubt either has anything to do with the first phase. I don't think that many people like it much, including me, but phase 2 is very good. There's few things more badass than fighting a lightning god on top of clouds. Nameless King, the only boss in the base game that nailed the difficulty for me. I don't hate the first phase, even though the camera can be a bit annoying. In the second phase the king's attacks are predictable and kind of slow, but are also devastating. He truly feels like a king. He doesn't rush to kill you. He takes his time and will bury you in the ground many times before you best him. Wait, how can he bury you in the ground when there is no ground? Never mind, moving on. Number 15, Demon of Hatred. I wasn't sure how beloved Demon of Hatred was. I knew it was a well-liked boss, but I honestly didn't really think it would make it to the top 20. I was very wrong. So what makes this boss so good? Well, it's very different from all the other Sekiro bosses. It focuses more on dodging, running and jumping than it does on deflecting. Not that deflecting isn't used here. It is, just not that much. The boss is also absolute eye candy when it comes to his abilities. The Ring of Fire in phase 3 is so fucking cool. It also has a huge amount of different attacks. The music is good, and the fact that this is the sculptor makes this a rather depressing fight. And I know people love those. So even though personally I'm not the biggest fan of this fight, I can for sure see why so many others are. Number 14, Soul of Cinder. Another boss I find slightly overrated, but again, easy to see why it's so beloved. The first phase offers so much variety with all the different fighting stances the boss has, and it's cool that he uses abilities that the player can use. It is a bit RNG heavy though, since there isn't a fixed order to how he switches the stances. So if you're bad at, say, the Pyromancer stance, you're probably gonna pray he uses anything other than that. But phase 2 is a neat homage to Dark Souls 1's final boss, Gwyn, and I would say it's what Gwyn should have been like. Here his attacks aren't too fast for the game's combat. He isn't parryable, and he uses lightning. You know, the thing he's most known for. I get that Gwyn was just a husk of his former self in that game, but come on. Who wouldn't have liked to see him throw lightning bolts at you? Number 13, Twin Princes. I'm happy to see the Twin Princes here, as they're probably my favorite main game boss in Dark Souls 3. This fight is pure fun while still being epic and somewhat tragic. The fight introduces you to the quite tricky mechanics of the Princess, with an 1v1 against Lorien, and then builds on those bases with the harder, more complex phase against Lorien and Lothric. Also, it feels like the climax of the main game because of the setting, like the way that the boss, the lore and the music. I agree. I also like how this isn't really a gank fight. They're more of a single target, but in order to win you have to try to get behind Lorien to damage his brother Lothric. And I think that teleporting is really fun. It keeps you on edge and keeps the fight mobile, otherwise this would be a bit of a strafing game. Number 12, Knight Artorias. Artorias outside of the top 10, almost as surprising as Ornstein and Smo not being on the list. But Artorias is a neat fight. It's got lots of tragic lore, atmosphere, a pretty solid moveset. He's also very mobile for a Dark Souls boss. He doesn't have as many crazy long combos as Manus, but he is still definitely fun to fight. I absolutely love fighting him with a fast weapon. That way it's not a waiting game where you have to constantly look for opportunities to hit him. Oh, and by the way, Artorias is left-handed. You're fighting Artorias at his 10%, if even that. This guy is such a fucking Chad. Number 11, Sir Alonne. I'm a bit surprised that people like Sir Alonne more than Artorias, though not by much. They are kind of similar though, so I guess that makes sense. Sir Alonne is also fast and mobile for Dark Souls 2 standards, has one of the best soundtracks ever, and a shiny clean floor. No wonder he gets so pissed at you. You just waltz in there and dirty the place with your disgusting dirty boots. I would be mad too, and the fight is very fair, as long as you have ADP leveled up. Stupid ADP. But it's so fair that once you learn the fight properly, you can do this fight easily without taking a single hit. While it might make this a pushover on later playthroughs, it's so satisfying to master it. And if you do it without taking a hit, the boss just straight up kills himself. That's a neat reward. Number 10, Darkeater Midir. I included Midir in the top 10 divisive bosses video, but not in the top 10 underrated bosses video because this boss only caused some outrage at the start of the Ringed Cities release. But now people have calmed down and most really love this fight. As do I. I think this is one of the most successful attempts at making a spectacle fight also work as a straight up fight. It's really fun gameplay wise. And despite the size of the boss, the fight is completely fair, to the point that once you learn it, it becomes very easy. I also love the music here, kind of an underrated theme I think. Unpopular opinion here, Midir is extremely underrated and is the best dragon fight in any game ever. Luckily that's not really an unpopular opinion in this community. Number 9, Sister Friede. I thought Sister Friede would be much lower, but nope, people clearly love this fight on my server. And I think it's great too. If you like a more atmospheric and slower fight, phase 1 is for you. If you're into Ornstein and Smo type of gank fights, phase 2 is for you. If you like intense and fast-paced fights, phase 3 is for you. There's something for everyone, except for those who don't enjoy long fights, because that's what this is. Personally, I don't really care much for phase 1, but second phase is a gank fight done right, and the third phase is fucking great. I prefer this kind of fast and spectacle-filled fights, and even if you have a slower build, her quickness is balanced out by her giving lots of backstab opportunities, so it's very good. Number 8, Demon Prince. Demon Prince is such a great fight, and I'm glad it's receiving some recognition here. Phase 1 is again a gank fight done right. While I think I find Ornstein and Smo a more fun gank fight, I think this is a better designed gank fight. For most of the fight, one is melee and the other one is ranged. Then at one point both are melee, and at one point both are ranged. It's a unique way of making a duo fight for sure. But phase 2 is one of the most amazing things on this planet. Every attack just looks cool as fuck. The music helps too. I think the only thing holding Demon Prince back is the lack of emotional impact. It's a fun fight, but it's not the final boss or anything. It's not a huge lore piece, but it sure is a great opening to the Ringed City. Number 7, Orphan of Kos. The only tiring thing about this fight is the screeches. It just keeps going like all the time. Other than that, the fight is fantastic. Both phases are great in their own right. Phase 1 is slower and more methodical, but still really challenging. Phase 2, however, is one of the most intense fights in the series. Every attack has just massive impact, even the quicker ones. Orphan of Kos is still my favorite boss. His combination of abnormal animations with sudden bursts of aggression give his fight an interesting flow. One moment you have to focus on getting out of the situation fast, but most of the time you have to pay close attention to what to do, since a lot of his attacks can easily punish poorly chosen timings. That's hard to read. The fact that he retaliates after being hit enough puts the player at caution, and he even at times reacts to the player merely approaching him after an attack to punish those who think he's free to attack as per usual. I had trouble reading that, but yeah, well said. Number 6, Gehrman, the First Hunter. Gehrman is such a nice contrast to the horror of the rest of the game. It's unexpected that the final boss of such a dark, bloody game is actually just this old kind grandpa in a beautiful field of flowers. But then you fight him and you realize he's actually a fucking beast. He's not that hard, but he sure is aggressive. When he uses the one-handed weapon anyway. When he uses the scythe it's far slower, and it gives the fight a nice flow when he switches between the two fighting styles. The music is also one of the most haunting pieces in Soulsborne, and the boss dashes around the field a lot, making you have to try to keep up with the pace. It keeps the fight mobile, and I like that. Number 5, Lady Maria of the Astral Clocktower. I'm seeing a lot of people in my comments lately saying Lady Maria is the most overrated FromSoft boss, so I wasn't sure if my community would rank her that highly. But I guess they did, and I'm happy because she's still up there for me as well. Sure, phase 1 is a bit too easy, I guess, but after that the fight reaches the desired intensity. All the bloody swings of her are a nice visual as well, and the music makes the fight even more badass. I love this boss so much, every phase is satisfying and fun. I love every attack. Her lore, her music is my favorite in Bloodborne, her cutscene is amazing, her voice actress is perfect. You feel an emotional connection to her because of the doll. So what he's trying to say is that he likes her because she's hot. Number 4, Ludwig the Accursed / the Holy Blade. Both phases are pretty much perfect. In phase 1 you battle a scary as fuck horse monster, where every attack is just threatening, and I still clench whenever dodging them. Then you get to phase 2 and the transition is absolutely beautiful. Still my favorite cutscene in Soulsborne. And here you battle a giant swordsman who uses moonlight magic to strike you down. It's just fucking cool, and it's well designed gameplay wise as well. It's too bad that the music sucks. Just kidding, it's great. And the fight has a good mixture of different attacks. There's long combos, ranged attacks, AoEs, and a few very unique attacks, such as the boss clinging to the ceiling before dropping down on you, as well as charging up his giant sword with the power of moonlight, and then slamming it down and creating this giant wave of awesomeness. It's so fucking cool. Number 3, Owlfather. So Owlfather is probably my favorite boss in Sekiro. It's one of the only times in the series where on my first playthrough, I didn't care at all about trying to beat the boss. I just wanted to keep fighting him because it was so much fun. It's a fast-paced, movement-heavy fight, and it has some of the most fun attacks to counter. I love this Shadow Rush attack. You can either parry it or use the Mikiri counter. Both are satisfying. Him turning into a literal owl is also cool, and I like how when he drops down on you, he either uses a slam attack or a sweep, but only if you deflect the drop down attack. It's a way to reward you for mastering that attack. And the music is good, the character itself is good, even though, my god, he's such a dick! But I guess the one thing lacking is an amazing setting. It's just Lady Butterfly's arena used again, something the top 2 don't lack. Number 2, Isshin the Sword Saint. Isshin just keeps getting better the more I fight him, but let's quickly get the worst aspect of this fight out of the way. Genichiro. I like Genichiro, but at this point I think everyone is just tired of having to fight him before Isshin. It's not a big deal though, he's really easy once you learn it. I don't think the first phase of Isshin is anything too spectacular, but it is a fun little sword fight. But then you get to phase 2 and things get fucking insane. He's probably got the biggest amount of different combos out of any boss in the series. It keeps you on edge the whole time. I can never really predict this boss. But nothing is more satisfying than perfectly deflecting this entire combo here. It's definitely the best main game final boss FromSoft has ever made. Number 1, Slave Knight Gael. but number 1 had to be Gael. We all knew it, and I can't disagree. I fucking love Gael as well. I love that they finally made the fight have one huge health bar instead of like 2 or 3 separate ones, like they usually do in Dark Souls 3. That gotcha moment started to get a bit tiresome. But yeah, this fight is pretty much perfect, as shown by the rank average, which has for the last 3 bosses been a perfect S, which has never happened in any other rankings before. At most it's been an S-. But this boss is another example of me not wanting to beat the boss on my first playthrough. It was just too much fun. Phase 2 is like a love child of Artorias and Orphan of Kos. Phase 2 is a beast of its own with a fun moveset that's enhanced by the cloak. I really love the cloak and how it changes this fight. It punishes you for not doing perfect dodges. Iframing the sword isn't enough this time around, and Phase 3 is up there as one of the most intense in the series. And the music in all 3 phases is fucking awesome. So there we go! That's the top 20 best bosses ranked according to my Discord community. Not entirely like mine, but close enough. Here's roughly what mine would look like, but not entirely sure. But be sure to let me know how you would have ranked them and why. And thanks for watching. See ya!